Ladies and gentlemen, we are back.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very special weekend, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting a lot of music. We're getting a lot of music this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. It's official. Jackboys 2 has officially dropped, ladies and gentlemen, and I am going to give you my review. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, very recently I dropped my review of the Clips album. And a lot of people are A and Bing within the span of less than 8 hours or 12 hours of the release, maybe, or what have you, of the new Jackboys project. A lot of people are A and Bing the Jackboys project in comparison to the Clips project. And quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I have to give a public service announcement, a PSA to all music listeners, a PSA to the entire industry of music, primarily in the area of hip hop and rap. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my PSA. Before we get into the Jackboys 2 review, ladies and gentlemen, I have to do this. For years, the music industry has misgenred black music. I mean, we have to understand where the whole nature of genreing music comes from, right? And at one point, anything that was made by black people was called race music. The only delineation of this being that or this was when white people came into the picture of creating music, just to delineate the music made from one group in another, so that this group would listen to this and that group would listen to this. And quite frankly, I think in today's era of music, as far as we can say we've come, as far as we can say, racism and all this stuff doesn't exist, today's music industry is absolutely lazy. Because there is no reason why a rapping album like the Clips album should be compared in any way, shape, or form to an album like the Jackboys 2 project. We have melodic rap and we have real hip hop to its core rap. It's two totally different things. And don't get me wrong, there is an evolution as it relates to this genre as well. I mean, this melodic modern rap came from a trap. It came from different experimentations or different evolutions within the general realm of black music, right? But it's now evolved from this trap music into this melodic punk rock type of a genre. And I say this over and over again, it needs to be put in its proper place in order to be properly understood and appreciated. And it's not fair that we take a phenomenal album in the Clips album, which is album of the year, and then we look at we look at this new Jackboys 2 project and we say, oh, this doesn't measure up, so it's not as good, or it's not something I'm willing to listen to. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I do think that it's at first I thought it wasn't the proper timing for the Jackboys 2 project, and I understand you're building off of the hype of a diss and you're benefiting from it and what have you, but it's just, I just feel like, this Clips album really turned me into a bit of a rap snob, because it's I'm listening to real rap. I know what real rap is, right? And a lot of people do this thing where they hate on, quote unquote, or shit on the newer modern music, and these young music listeners feel like they're being hated on, and they feel like they have to respond in saying that, oh, your music is old and what have you. And it's not really the case. There isn't a real debate in that regard. There's what this genre of music is, which is hip hop, which is rap at its core, and there's this genre of music, which is an evolution of that, which is melodic rap. It's melodic punk rap, right? I mean, nobody's going to relate punk rock to to blues or to hard rock, right? It's two totally different things, but we see the evolution and where things derive and what the influences are, but it's two different classes of music, and it needs to be understood as such. And it's not fair that in when we talk about quote unquote black music that it's not put into its proper place. I mean, it's we often see it where Beyonce drops an album and it's R&B, regardless of what the style of music is, and Taylor Swift drops an album and it's pop. But she also wins best country album, right? We just see it way too often. And I feel like it's there is an undertone there, in case you're wondering, but it's just I don't think that it's right for us to be having the conversation about this album in a completely different category or genre of music versus this album that is just different, right? And they have one derives from the other, no doubt about it. Again, if there's a way to just generally look at music and say which one is better or worse, yes, I get that, but I can tell you right now that the Clips album to me is the best album of the year, right? But in saying that, I'm not necessarily putting down the Travis Scott project or the Jackboys 2 project, right? Because I understand how to delineate between the two versions of music and understanding that they're not in the same class with one another. And I think individuals need to clearly understand that. And I get that there's a connection there through some sense of turmoil or what have you. But it's this melodic rap is not. The lyrics don't mean anything in melodic rap. Outside of the nature of songwriting, right? When you listen to hip hop at its core, when you listen to rap, like real rap, it's about lyricism. It's about production. It's about how you're using your voice as an instrument. But when you talk about melodic rap, it's more so about just specifically using your voice as an instrument, songwriting. It's this modern, popular style of rap, and it's about vibe. Right. And it's okay that it's not lyrical. It's okay that some of its influences are a little bit negative because it's more along the lines of youthful behavior, right? Which is in most situations haphazardous because young people do stupid things, right? And so it's okay for that to be what it is because it's speaking to a culture. It's speaking to a nature of the people, right? And so one can be great and the other one can still be what it is without putting another one down. And so I think people need to understand like that delineation and how to properly put certain music in its place. And I think that we have to do that moving forward because I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that I love this Clips album and I hate the Jackboys 2 project because of how much I love the Clips album. I'm not going to do that. Now, again, like I said, initially when I saw that this album dropped and I knew it was dropping, but when I turned it on, I'm like, hearing Waka Flocka scream in my ear after listening to this Clips album, I was just like, bro, like bad timing. Like I can't, I'm a rap snob. Like I just listened to some of the greatest lyrics in production combination or composition in general this entire year. And then I go to this and I'm like, what the hell? Right. I couldn't digest it at first, but I did a blind playthrough and then I sat back and I really, got into the vibe of it. And I take a look at this Travis Scott project or this Jackboys 2 project, and I'm able to properly assess it for what it is. And I think that's important. We have to properly assess the music for what it is. Right. And again, when I look at this modern popular rap or melodic rap music, again, I can make the delineation, and I think that we need to do that moving forward. There needs to be an additional genre or category for this music because it is good and it's in its place, but it should not be compared to real rap. And that was my issue with the Grammys 2 years ago with Travis Scott's, I believe, Utopia and Killer Mike's project. They're not in the same category of music, but they're next to each other. It's not fair. You know what I'm saying? Like it's if best rap or hip hop album means this is hip hop and that's not, And to say like Killer Mike should have won, and if we're talking about hip hop, if we're talking about if we're talking about hip hop, right? But I think that there should be a hip hop category, and there should be a general rap category, just like there's best album in pop or best album in country, because rap is rap is a large is a large macro group of a bunch of micro groups, right? And I think that we have to understand that when we're talking about the music today, because Utopia was a fantastic project. I mean, I think people don't account for the fact that Travis Scott produced behind the boards a lot of that music, much in the way that a rock band not does instrumentation and then also makes their songs in a way. Honestly, there's pieces and songwriters and things like that, but again, there's a little bit more credit there than some other melodic rappers, because for instance, I always say this about Playboy Carti: he does not make beats, he does not do production, he just does what he does vocally, and that's him, right? And so I don't put him on any top tier list of music making in that category of melodic rap. And the reason why I give Travis Scott so much, because he does a lot to curate his sound. And then even when we talk about a guy like Don Toliver, which I'll go into later in more depth, is he is a songstress. He is a great songwriter. He is a great voice. I mean, not only with the what he does with and without auto-tune is fantastic. And I think that he needs to drop a live album so people truly get the gravity of his talent, because he is by far, I think, phenomenal in terms of how he makes his music within the category that he does. And that's my PSA, ladies and gentlemen. I just think that we got to cut it with the bullshit and understand that rap is this macro group of a bunch of micro versions of it, right? And it needs to be properly denoted, and it's not, and it's unfair. And quite frankly, if you guys know me by now, I'm going to call it racist. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call it racist, right? All right. I just think that it's based on an industry that's run by the people it's run by, and the lack of care associated to properly denoting the music so that it's respected and recognized in that fashion. I just think that it's lazy, and I feel like they don't care about us. They don't care about the music we're making. They just want to maximize music. Right? They don't care about properly properly archiving the music in a way where it's understood properly, right? For us, because when rock came, it was, oh, this is rock. This is this thing rock. This is this rock thing, right? This is this rock thing, right? When pop music came, and it was just a white people's way of now making their version of R&B, honestly, right? A white R&B is pop, right? Black singing is R&B. It's just like, we look at the root of it, and it doesn't fix itself. Like, we can't deny what it derives from and how it shows its face today. And a lot of people say, oh, stop living in the past. But I think people don't realize how history impacts the future when they say that. But I'm off my high horse, ladies and gentlemen, into the review of this new Travis Scott project, ladies and gentlemen. Into the review. We're going to get into the review, ladies and gentlemen, for this new Jackboys project. Now, I have to say this off the top. There are some highlights and there are some lowlights to this project. I've seen some of I've seen some of the commentary on the internet. I've seen what some people are now calling a puppet in Kai Cenat's reaction to it and his rating for it, and none of that will affect me, but I will address it. Again, I think it's great to hear from these artists on the Jackboy label, because they have talent, and they have had highlights throughout their careers, and to see them in this level of concentration on a project, I think is great to be given from an artistic perspective and in a listener perspective. I do like the overall. I do like the the composition of the project, even though, like I said, it has its highlights and it has its lowlights. I like the instituting of Bun B, and in a way where they're having sort of an OG conversation about culture around music with him. And I like that, because if you're being a music listener, and you're able to decipher or one day understand that, it's kind of giving reverence to the people who have come before. And I like that they're making that connection, right? And again, back to some of what I was saying earlier, it's interesting because like I said, this macro group of rap, at one point in time had delineations like Dirty South and West Coast and East Coast, New York, and what have you, right? And today, when we look at music, there's a Florida sound, there's a Michigan sound, there's a Houston sound, there's a DMV sound, there's a New York sound, and so there's so much diversity in rap music today, a lot more than I think we may have had in the past, especially with artists from all different areas and walks of life. I think there's a rapper from every different macro culture or micro culture of blackness in the industry today, which is something we have to give kudos to when we talk about the diversity of music making. And I think the proper respect should be given to that uniqueness in different areas of music making. And so, when we look at this project, he talks about Houston culture, he talks about Caribbean culture, and Florida culture around music. You know what I'm saying? I think that composition, or that sort of nature of the album, it adds some level of like continuity to it all, right? And some texture and context to it, and I like that a lot about the project. And that's, I guess, just a side quest conversation. Also, I mean, if I have to talk, in analyzing the album, moving on to track listing, to me, it is very much of a mixtape style track listing. To me, it's not as put together, but it transitions relatively well, in part with how Bun B sort of introduced these songs the way that they do. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that when we talk about winners and losers and goods and bads of this project, I think that a winner is Sofago. Again, popular artist, came up out of the SoundCloud era. A lot of people love him. I unfortunately did not get to witness any of his SoundCloud hype, but I do think that he has some highlights on this album, and I think that he's officially gotten his proper introduction from the Jackboys label. I think that the projects that they put out, I think that it was a little bit too refined for his art audience, and they didn't really get that true freeness of his music that they appreciated from his SoundCloud era. So it's good to see that he has some tracks on here that are actually to be appreciated, that are in line with what some people are familiar with in terms of, how he's introduced himself to his audience. Another winner on the project is Don Toliver. I mean, Don Toliver, time and time again, is proving just how talented he is, and just how far beyond so many people on the Cactus Jack label he is. And I quite frankly believe and think that at some point he should break off and just be Don Toliver, because I think that he can grow to that level of height, especially with the volume of music that he's produced and the quality of it. He makes good music in this modern era, and I think it just has great replay value. It's good for what it is, and I've seen him live on multiple occasions, and I truly believe that he's talented beyond just blending in with what is modern. I mean, his songwriting, his overall sound, the vibe that he brings is just phenomenal, and he's just another winner on this project. Another winner, I would say, is Travis Scott in general. I looked at the track listing originally, and I was just like, whoa, we got this big chunk of songs that's just Travis. He's all over this project in terms of features with artists and things like that. And There's Travis and some other artists that are bigger that are not under the Cactus Jack label, or are technically Jackboys. And I think that the way that he meshes and blends with them, there are lowlights of particular songs. I will say, like Florida Boy, whoever that is on the first verse, I have no clue, but it's like, what the hell is this? And then Kodak Black comes on, and I feel like he raps way too long, but it finds its way to be appreciated in some way. And then the track with NBA YoungBoy, I think that at the beginning was, to me, like, I don't know about this one, bro. But then it finds its way to, I guess, with YoungBoy being featured, and why people like him, which I'm not the biggest fan of him. I know why people would like that. And then his production with Pretty Brown Thing, and that song, I think it could be a really big song. I think that's the one from this particular project. And another guy I'm a really, really, really big fan of is Shy Baby. The track with Shy Baby, I think it's which one is it? Beep Beep. Oh yes, the track with Shy Baby is phenomenal. That one's being downloaded and kept downloaded, and that is a good song right there. A lowlight loser, I would say, is Sheck West. I don't think that this album highlighted Sheck West enough for him to be on a hiatus for so long. The song he dropped, ILMB, I swear they did something different with the beat, or something like that. I have to go back and listen to it one for one, because the song on this project sounds a whole lot better than what it did when I listened to it as a single. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. Yeah, I liked it on this project, and maybe it's because the other songs that were around it, but I don't think that Sheck West. I just feel like he needs to break out beyond his initial hype, and be able to solidify him and himself and what he brings to his viewers, and then this era of music. He's had one of the biggest popular songs of anybody under the Cactus Jack imprint. It's just he can't seem to find that peak again, or even normalize himself as something generally digestible. It's 2000, I think it's 2000 Excursion. It is the songs sound great in that 1 minute we got on the trailer, but that verse that he put down in the middle of that song, I was just like, bro, turn this off. Like, it's just, Sheck West has this way of rapping where he finds himself in and out of these pockets where it brings the vibe, and it adds this relativity to it all. But I just feel like I need more. Like, you know what I'm saying? I need in general, when I talk about the overall project and losers, I would say another loser is just some of the songwriting and the lyricism. And I think that, again, is a nature of this version of music, which, again, I don't really knock it too much. But at the end of the day, I just feel like there's certain lyrics that I'm just like, what the hell are you, like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like, some of the lyrics I just don't want to hear. Like, I think Shy Baby at the end of it had a great verse, but he ended it with some Pride Parade thing. I was just like, what? Like, it was just so unorthodox. You didn't have to say that. You could have said something a lot better. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just, and I guess that's my one knock about, like, this version of music, is it just doesn't maybe prioritize quality compositional songwriting along with, like, lyricism and things like that. It's just whatever is free and comes to mind, which I think is great about the genre, because it has this level of viability that can hit or miss. You know what I'm saying? So I would say those are my winners and losers for the project. Now, getting to my overall rating of the project, Jackboys 2, I give it personally a 7.5 out of 10. I've listened to the project 4 times already. That's my minimum when it comes to listening to projects, just to give myself some time to digest it, catch up with the vibe, dig into it, and then just give it a general listen based on that known information that I gathered from the first 3 listens. That's how I do it, ladies and gentlemen. Jackboys 2, I give it a 7.5. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that I think it's a good project. I think that there are some highlights, but there are also some lowlights. Unfortunately, I don't think that it is better than the first Jackboys 2 project. I think it gets a little bit winded as well, but I think that they want to tell this story around, sort of the music with how they composed it, and that's the plus for me. But at the same time, again, like I said, it could be attributed to the nature of this version of rap music, but and maybe it's the timing of dropping around the Clips album where people have so much, we're digging deep into listening to the music and we're paying attention to every little detail, and then we get to this version of music where it's not about paying attention to the detail. It's just about listening to it and catching a vibe. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not taking away from that version of music because, punk rock, alt rock, is Green Day is, Green Day and Fall Out Boy isn't U2, you know what I'm saying, or Metallica, right? They're two different versions of that, and I'm not gonna listen to them the same, right? So 7.5 out of 10 on the Jackboys 2 project. Yeah. Track listing, I feel like could have been better. There are some songs that I would have left off of here. I think that a lot of it is built to buy into the hype of the youth. I think a lot of it is maximizing on the youth listener, the young listener. And I think that is interesting, and I think that this is when we talk about AM being an album, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think that it's an important point or bookmark to in the culture of music to have this conversation. I mean, I think we've had so many important moments in music within the last year, from the Kendrick Lamar and Drake diss or beef, and we deal with this a bit of a year later. And rather than looking at it as this versus that, I think that we need to have a serious conversation about rap music and its diversity and how to properly understand that diversity, because there's so many micro layers to this macro culture of rap, right? And I think that, yes, rap started out as hip hop, right? But then it became these different things, right? It became hip hop. It went from rap, general rap, you know what I'm saying? And it got obviously hip hop, right? And again, I know there's some people that would put hip hop as a culture above rap, but rapping is the art form of music, right? And so hip hop is the culture associated, and you rap within hip hop. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about music specifically, and there is a culture around all of this because music is a part of culture, I put rap as macro to what hip hop is, because now we're talking about different cultures within this art form of rap, right? When we talk about singing, that's singing, and we talk about rap, that's rap. So that's the actions. So, I mean, we look at this macro, the micro levels of rap. We have hip hop, right? Then we go into our gangster rap, and a lot of people say hip hop, and then they then talk about this conscious era, but that was a part of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know LL Cool J was a little bit more for the pop side of things, but he had these natures of rhyming and flowing and things like that. And I think within the spectrum and realm of hip hop, it did grow into, when we talk about the BIGs and even the LL Cool J's and the Run DMCs, I think hip hop or hip pop was sort of bred at that time, but it wasn't recognized as such because it was such an early era, right? Because what the hell was the Beastie Boys talking about, right? They were just popular guys rapping, and I think that's an inception of hip hop. I believe that a nature of when we talk about LL Cool J, and I think there's a close comparison to Drake and what he does today in terms of where he fits in the category of rap. And so we go from hip hop, right, this early era, right, and then we go into a little bit more of a neo soul rap, because neo soul era in the early 90s was very, very, very heavy. And at the same time, We were giving people like Outkast and Dead Prez, right, and Common, right, and so there was a sense of relativity to where it wasn't so regional per se, except for when we talk about Cowcast coming from the South, but there was still this sense of relativity and understanding of we still rapping, like we still got this nature of hip hop and culture and respect and peace and love associated because we understand the music as a tool, and then we go into this era of, again, I would say another version of that popular or hip hop or rap pop or popular rap. I think we're looking at popular rap here next to hip hop. And we go into gangster rap, right? We go into gangster rap. And then I think from that gangster rap era, we go into an era of, I would say, so we went from gangster rap, we got the 50s, we got the Hoves, and then Kanye and Lil Wayne came at the same time. And Kanye and Wayne, they were still Wayne was more gangster rap. Kanye, I think, helped introduce or merged sort of that gangster rap sound and in early 90s hip hop sort of style together. And Kanye started to make it about the style and evolving the culture and the eccentricness of it all, and the uniqueness and the more lighter side and things like that. And Wayne really dug into the gangster rap side, and then also the rhymability of it all, and taking that to a next level, right? And I think that I would say that was sort of like the stylistic sort of era of music, right? And so it was about rapping. I mean, we had guys like Fabulous, and it was how far can you take this the realm of lyricism in a way, but then also still have this, this sense of appeal, right? And so we have that era, which I'm still trying to figure out how to denote. And then we move into sort of the auto-tune / dancey era, right? The auto-tune dancey era. And then the dancey song, do that, crank that Soldier Boy type of stuff. And then even when we talk about the early 2000s and popular, when we talk about gangster rap, we also have to mention the young artists in Bow Wow and Little Romeo too. And that, even though they weren't so gangster rap, they were sort of that hip hop that continued, but it sort of found its way under that in a way in terms of mass appeal. And then from Lil Wayne, we go into from Lil Wayne and Kanye, we go into like this dancey era. Wayne makes this transition into wanting to be a rock star, but it brings a level of diversity and uniqueness to the category of rap to where now we can do something a little bit different, right? Or totally off the rails. And then you have to also mention T-Pain, who helped to normalize the use of auto-tune, even though it was already used, but he used it in a different way, in a way where it sounded electronic. It sounded not like it was trying to make you sound like a regular singer, but it sounded like you were using auto-tune, and it was blatant, and we loved it. Like, T-Pain is a very important part of music in terms of foundational texture or context. And with what T-Pain, Lil Wayne, and Kanye put together, that then bred guys like a Travis Scott and a Chief Keef, right? And then at the same time, where you got Travis Scott and Chief Keef really jumping out into the scene, right? You got this reemergence of gangster rap. A little bit previous to that, even when we go back to the Kanye Lil Wayne era, you also had Gucci Mane, which is this reemergence of gangster rap, but it more so existed in this underground mixtape sort of an era. And I again, in the gangster rap era, when I mentioned in the early 2000s, you have to mention guys like T.I., Little Flip, UGK, things like that, because again, at that point in time, early 2000s, it was regional, right? But it was very few regional areas. Like, you just had New York, California, and really Atlanta, in Houston, which was the little one of them all. And Houston sound didn't really get popping globally until Mike Jones, which I think is still early 2000s as well. But it didn't really or it set itself, but it was also the Houston or the Texas sound was always juxtaposed to what was popular in a way. Um, and Atlanta sort of took over at that time. Um, yeah, Atlanta sort of, and there's a lot of music to talk about in these different eras, and I might be missing things. I'm just talking about the highlights. And so we move on from the dancey singing era and how Wayne, T Pain, and Kanye sort of bred this new era, and you have guys like Trav and Gucci Man as well, and even some Future also started to emerge into the 2010s. We got in the 2010s, we got guys like like I said, Future, Trav, Chief Keef, Joey Badass, and Kendrick Lamar, and this was this was this now 2010s was this era where we seen rap music branch off into it sort of like it was the 2010s introduced the most branches, the most diversity in all of rap music. It's like it took all of these versions of rap that existed, and some genres kept some of these parts going. Other genres sort of branched out into other genres, and it just, you know what I'm saying? But what stayed true to through it all was, I think, the core nature of hip hop. Hip hop, I think, has never left, right? In terms of the culture and the style and things like that. And it still persists today. And I think that's the thing that lives on forever. And I'm not, we talk about these whole pillars of hip hop, and, those things have evolved into today. And I think Kanye and these different artists together have helped to carry them in their own way. And then again, we find ourselves to today, I think, in the modern era of music, and how it's now bred within the recent years, this hard rock hip hop style, melodic rap. And so, I, again, to my point and what I made earlier, I'm not gonna correlate an Andre 3000 or a 50 Cent to Kendrick Lamar. We're never going to see the comparison between a Kendrick Lamar and a 50 Cent, right? Because they're not in the same category of music, right? But I could, if I wanted to, compare a 50 Cent and a Jeezy maybe, right? And I think even you got guys like Rick Ross, who, while he might give off the persona of being a gangster rapper, I think he's more along the lines of a real rapper's rapper. So just giving a little bit of a history lesson on the evolution of music and understanding the macro micro culture of rap in general, and personally how I feel like things have been misgenred and misunderstood because of that misgenring. And we are able and we can appreciate music for what it is without taking away from another. And so, again, I like the Jackboys 2 project. Again, I'm a millennial. I grew up on a lot of different versions of music, and I appreciate a lot of different versions of music. But the highest peak of music making is lyricism, is rapping. I mean, I always compare it to sports, right? I love the guy who can jump out the gym, right? But the guy who puts the ball in the hoop the best is always the most exciting guy. And that's a part of the reason why, we're still having a debate on LeBron versus MJ, right? And we miss out on so many of the other guys who had that pure raw talent. You know what I'm saying? And again, my personal opinion, and if we're talking about it just for the sake of comparison here, or just setting the record straight, I do think that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player to ever play in the NBA, or or the organized sport of basketball. And I personally, I just feel like he does everything, and everything, all the pressure that he had. But a guy like MJ, I think, he came along with more than just playing basketball. He was the he was an institution. Like they said, Michael Jordan, he's grown the U.S. economy worldwide by 10 billion. Like, a basketball player, right? And he came at a time where the NBA has never seen that level of growth, has never seen an icon, right? I mean, the NBA saw superstars, but never saw a global icon. You know what I'm saying? And the only person after MJ to do that or even be anything close was Bron. And so it's hard for us to look past the greatness of MJ because of how much he brought to popular culture. You know what I'm saying? But when we're just talking about basketball, like the guys on the court, LeBron James is the greatest thing we've ever seen on the floor, on the court of basketball. And so that's just that conversation. But we went off the rails. That's about time for us to go, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you all for listening. And drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this review if you made it this far. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Follow me on social media. All of my handles are in the description area. And yeah, man, let my comment section be your oyster. I love to have conversations and give people spaces to share their thoughts because your thoughts matter. All right, ladies and gentlemen, peace.